So the scale is really mind-blowing. And I think a lot of the things that work at smaller scale really, really stop working at this level. Over time, you realize, okay, I actually need to build an incentive system for other people to be able to do that quickly. I need to give them tooling that makes it quick for them to do it. I need to give them guardrails and like a design system. That means they build these models in a sustainable way in the first place. And that's, for me, really the only way to deal with the scale.
Today's episode is brought to you by Omni. Most companies I speak to want AI analytics, but are failing to put projects into production. That's where Omni's different. It's the semantic brain that grounds AI in the heart of your business logic, giving you governed answers, whilst also the depth to identify root causes. It's intelligence everywhere, from your spreadsheets to their chat feature, even within your product. Omni moves you beyond the dashboard. Don't just take my word for it. Trust teams like Perplexity and Synthesia that are already using Omni to deliver intelligence that people trust. Check out them in the show notes or visit omni.co. That's omni.co. Now, back to the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stacked Data Podcast. Today my guest is Moritz Kerstan, the Analytics Engineering Director at Wise, which is one of the world's leading fintech companies, moving billions in money across borders every day. Moritz leads a deliberately smaller, should we say, an Agile AE team supporting a incredibly large data organization, thinking 150 plus analysts. And he's built a clear point of view on why he believes that's the right model to make it work at the scale that they're operating at, and what it actually takes to drive impact without a top-down mandate. We're going to dive into his philosophies behind keeping the team agile and how his team operates to empower units across the organizations, their abilities and how they're using and building LLM integrations inside a large enterprise, and all the bits in between. Moritz has been a friend in the industry. He's been a big advocate of that at data meetups. We'll actually be in Wise's offices for one later in July, and their team have also spoken at a few. So it's been a long time coming to have you on the show, Moritz. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Thanks for having me today.
Excellent. So I've obviously given a bit of an intro, Moritz, but it'd be great for the audience to get to understand a bit more of your career journey and how you come to leading analytics engineering across Wise.
Yeah, of course. Pretty much by accident, like all good careers, I would say. So how this all started out really was after uni, and like my first job in a startup, I was looking after marketing. So I never made a career plan like, hey, I love data, I want to go into data. Didn't really study anything in uni in this direction or anything like that. And my job there was like, hey, do some good marketing, right? Like get some customers for a company. And to do that, I had to use data, right? Like I realized pretty quickly, like, hey, the way we're doing this right now doesn't really work. You need to understand the results of the campaigns we run. You need to understand your customer behaviors. And from there, it really started very simple in a self-taught way of like, maybe I should put this in the Google Sheet. And then people talk about this thing called SQL. And I kind of started doing more and more of that. And then also realized, okay, wow, this is really my thing. Like this, you even get the short-term dopamine hit of like, oh, I built this really cool model, and it really helps me make these decisions now and work much faster than before. And the good thing is I was in a team of other people who were also doing marketing, and very quickly I was able to help them with the stuff that I built as well. And that really motivated me. Like I really felt like quite happy and intrinsically motivated about that. So from there, I kind of always followed this path of what's the biggest impact I can have right now with the skill set that I have, with something that kind of day-to-day intrinsically motivates me to do. So I went back then Wise, still in the marketing analytics team of realm, kind of built a team there over like 3-4 years. I always have been very, very motivated by the end outcome, right? Like I do enjoy building models, coding and stuff like that. But what really gets me out of bed in the morning is like, okay, we're trying to achieve something here for our customers, or I'm trying to achieve something for my colleagues. And I've always seen data a bit more as like a tool for that, not like the intrinsic reason I do this. It's more like, okay, there's another intrinsic reason something I want to achieve. Data is kind of the way there. And then over time, while working in the marketing analytics realm there, I kept complaining to my lead about how bad all of our processes were and our tooling was and all the stuff that frustrated me day to day. And then eventually said, okay, go and build a team and try to fix it. And that's what I'm still doing now, more or less successfully.
Excellent. I think that impact focus is, I think it's such an important part of a data person's skill set, which is often undervalued. And I think people don't necessarily get so caught up in the technical and the building that they forget maybe what the impact of what they're building and why they're building. So I know from working with you that how important that is. What drew you more to that sort of analytics engineering piece rather than data engineering or BI, and how this is all sort of why the glue in the middle?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We intentionally kind of keep these lines very fuzzy in general at Wise, or in my team especially. I try to keep roles very open-ended. I never want to end up in a situation where I have someone sitting there who's like, I see a problem, I know how to fix it, but it's not my job title, so I can't do it. So generally, I think I'm probably going in between all of those job titles, and as you say, kind of doing the glue in the middle. To me, that was where the biggest gap was. I think we were very strong in kind of the individual pieces of the puzzle. We have a really good Airflow hosting or something like that, for example. But what was missing was this kind of end-to-end. If I'm an analyst at the company, I want to, at the end of the day, influence a decision here. And that means I need to get some data live quickly. And to do that, you had to kind of navigate all these different systems and teams and different parts of this almost user journey. And that's what I wanted to fix, because I saw that's the biggest gap. No one else is trying to own that at the moment. No one else is trying to glue everything together.
And we've mentioned it at the start, but you guys at Wise work at a pretty large scale, I think it's fair to say. Help contextualize that for the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So we have about 8,000 Wisers, so people working here, and we have a data team of more than 300, so that's analysts and data scientists. In general, we work in empowered teams. So the idea here is that the people closest to the customer understand the customer's problems most and best, and they are empowered to make decisions on how to solve those problems. And they also work in a team that has different skill sets, right? So you have analysts, data scientists, engineers, PMs working together in these embedded units. That's generally the scale. So we have lots and lots and lots of kind of data producers and data practitioners, and they're embedded all over the company. They're not in a central team. Combined with that, data is also really democratized at Wise. We're not just saying that. I think we have about 5,000 weekly active users on the BI tool, something like that. So the scale is really mind-blowing. And I think a lot of the things that work at smaller scale really, really stop working at this level. It's super interesting, the kind of change of skill set almost that I also had to go through for a long time and develop a lot on, where at smaller scale, some things are just totally no problems because you can very directly influence them. You're like, oh, okay, we have 10 models that are really bad. Cool, I'll just rewrite them. Right? That'll take me, half a week or something like that. And cool, we fixed that problem. Now with AI, half a week. Back then, it would have probably taken me a couple of months. And over time, you realize, okay, I actually need to build an incentive system for other people to be able to do that quickly. I need to give them tooling that makes it quick for them to do it. I need to give them guardrails and a design system, really. That means they build these models in a sustainable way in the first place. And that's, for me, really the only way to deal with the scale, especially in comparison with what you mentioned, where we're running a pretty lean team. So the reason for why we're running a lean team is kind of twofold. So on the one hand, what I've noticed is that this way, you really, really end up with people who are intrinsically very, very motivated and do really high value work all the time. I think what I've noticed is if I give a team, data engineer or analytics engineer, that team will find work for them. Now, is that work always really high value? I wouldn't say so, right? Like at the end of the day, there's so much demand for data that you will be busy, but you won't necessarily have like customer impact if you're in those roles. Now with a more lean team, it doesn't happen so much because people are really aware of like, okay, this is a precious resource. We need to be very, very clear on where we're deploying that resource, the time of people who work in this realm. And you end up with very, very high impact work that has pretty clear customer impact at the end of the day, or at least a very clear story internally for our stakeholders, like what has improved. That's one reason for it, is like really stay on the high impact side. The other side is kind of how Wise runs. So at the end of the day, we're all about making a really fast and transparent product for our customers. And a big part of that is this kind of motto we have called minimum fees, where we basically say, okay, the way we price is look at our unit cost, then we're a profitable business, so we have a stable margin on top of that. And everyone here is quite focused on reducing that unit cost. What that actually means is become smarter about the way that you use all of our systems. So that's across the company, but also part of data, right? Like we don't really have the luxury to say, oh, just 4x the warehouse if data is a bit slow. We need to come up with a way to do that. And we pass that on to our customers, basically drop pricing for our customers over time. When we manage to drop unit costs, we get more customers that way and so on. So that's our flywheel. Part of that then also means my answer to our customers, me saying, hey, I need money from our customers to do something in data, can't really be, oh, I'll just 10x the team, right? Because that won't really fulfill our mission. I need to come up with a smarter way that scales.
Interesting. So how many people are actually in your team?
Yeah, currently it's 17, the latest numbers on the analytics engineering side. We actually, for a long time, like for 2 to 3 years, I think, had a team of about 5 only, because initially we were very centralized. We were kind of building out the basic platform stuff. We weren't using dbt before that. That was our first big project. It's like, well, we need to introduce dbt. And not only do we need to introduce dbt, we actually need to make the majority of our pipelines incremental, and we need to get analysts to build pipelines that are incremental. At Wise, the analyst role is really wide, like the ownership is really, really wide. So you're expected to influence really business decisions and build a better product with the rest of your team. But you are also responsible for the upstream transformation of your data, and to actually be able to take kind of raw data coming from product services or external data and make that actionable and useful. And so our team's ethos has been to enable analysts to do that more quickly, right? For them to worry less about this transformation bit. And dbt was one kind of piece of that puzzle. But yeah, we're pretty, if you look at the ratios of like how many data practitioners per analytics engineer we have, I think we are very, very lean. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely, in terms of percentages, there's definitely plenty of other organizations that operate at similar scales to Wise, where they, you're maybe their AE teams are probably 7-8 times the size of what you guys operate. How would you, there are these other fintechs and wider businesses maybe that have 70-80 plus analytics engineers. Obviously, you'd expect maybe their time to value, or maybe that's the wrong terminology, but the speed in which they can deliver impact and not be a bottleneck is probably might be quicker. How do you guys balance that internal when you mentioned you're such a scarce resource?
Yeah, I think partially this is of course a little bit about definitions of like what specifically do we call analytics engineering and what do we call analyst work, where like the work that a lot of the analysts do here are kind of in the analytics engineering realm. So some of it is like teams can unblock themselves because we give them the tools to enable that. The other bit is that we have to be incredibly clear on prioritization. And this is also something I ask everyone in the team to be incredibly clear about. So in general, we're in this environment as a kind of cross-functional almost team where we can, or at least cross-domain team, where everyone has really strong opinions on what we should be doing for good reasons. Like a lot of people have actually really good ideas of what we should be building next, what we should support them with. And the vast majority of these things have positive ROI. They're like really useful things to do. And it's our job to look at all of that and say, okay, here's the highest ROI project that we should be doing next. and that's incredibly difficult, as you can imagine. It really strengthens your muscle of prioritization, though. And what do I mean by that is that if we are not internally incredibly clear with each other of like, why are we working on this and not this other thing, then we won't be able to go to the organization and say, hey, here's why we're not working on your project. It's not because we don't like you, it's because we looked at our kind of project sizing and impact sizing, and we've basically come away from that saying, this will move our KPIs more than this other thing. And then we're very happy for other teams to kind of pitch to us in our KPIs and say, hey, actually, here's this other thing you could be doing. This would be the impact of it. And you end up doing a lot of, quantification of projects, and you really end up trying a lot to have more of an intellectual argument than, the most highest placed person in the room or the most senior person just says what goes. Same for me. I lose arguments all the time with the team on what I believe we should be doing versus what the data shows we should actually do. So there's this ongoing, constant prioritization process.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think with the speed of which people can now build with the likes of AI and the speed that organizations are expecting and data teams are being expected to move, it can be easy to get caught up on and not know what to work on. And I definitely see that when I speak to people that maybe don't know what impact work they're working on. What's your advice then, Moritz, to someone that's in the space? Because I think you've mentioned like tying it back to KPIs, but what other than I suppose just tying stuff back to KPIs, how would you coach someone to be better at prioritization and to apply that to their world?
Yeah, really good question. I'm not sure I'm fully there, but I can teach. I can talk through some of my learnings. I think early on, I once put a plan together in marketing analytics that was kind of like a long laundry list of all the things that people had asked us to do. And I got really good coaching on like, this is nonsense, delete all of this and you tell me what you should be doing and why. And I think that's maybe a first step in a way of like really fully owning and fully feeling the responsibility and accountability of your time. And really at the end of the day, like the cost you create for the customers of the business. It's like, okay, you really should be feeling in charge and accountable in the system of like, every minute I invest in this thing isn't invested in this other thing. Is that correct on the opportunity cost trade-off that we do? More practically though, I think what I annoy my team a lot about is quantification, even if it's not really possible. So what I mean by that is a lot of data work, I think is, if we're being real, pretty difficult to actually put a number on. Like I can't really A/B test giving half the company bad data and the other half good data and then say, oh, this is the impact that analytics engineering had. We can do, I think, a lot of like kind of napkin math though, that gives us like an almost on a logarithmic scale, like an idea of, okay, this thing at the end of the day will save 2 analytics engineers 3 hours a week. This other thing will affect 5,000 weekly users, right? Like immediately you kind of get into these, you have a lot of like, it's not very precise, but you kind of get an idea of there are different levels here. And in my experience, I would say the kind of, if you do this in a very disciplined fashion, then you realize there's probably 1 or 2 things you really should be doing that are kind of like at least 10x of all the other long tail, smaller stuff that you could be doing. What I mean by quantification is, yes, tie things to KPIs wherever you can, but there will be lots of things that you can't actually measure. But I still want you to explain the kind of logical chain, like in a perfect world where you could measure everything. Oh, you could measure the way that people make decisions. You could measure every minute that your data stakeholder spends on Looker, and you could immediately tell like everything. Even if realistically we can't, or we can't disentangle that from the overall, we can't disentangle that from the decisions that the business then makes that then lead to growth, we should be able to explain it in theory. And that has helped us a lot. Like that kind of makes 80% of projects kind of seem insignificant immediately and helps a lot with prioritization. So that would be my advice, to like A, really own it, and B, quantify even when it's really uncomfortable to quantify.
I think that's ownership is such a big thing, and I think for someone's career, being able to, one, you're going to move the needle in your own organisation, but being able to demonstrate that you can work autonomously, that you can take things end to end, and then linking it back, as I say, to that value is really, really valuable to yourself and to the organisation. So what does the day-to-day look like for analytics engineers in Wise? Say you hire, it seems, for this quite wide breadth of skill across maybe AE, bit of DE, etc. But yeah, what does the life look like of someone in your team?
Yeah, a very good question, because it's quite varied, and it really depends on the domain and pocket you're working in. Like, we put a lot of focus on really working closely with our stakeholders and understanding what tooling-wise, like what do they do day to day, and that can look very, like what the high impact activity in a domain is can look very differently, right? Like maybe in some places it's, we need to work out these very, very core data sets, and in other places it's more like, we need to kind of influence people into writing better code or something like that. So I think the most surprising bit is how little code we sometimes write. Like I sometimes get people, even internally, applying for roles whose story is a little bit like, I don't want to deal with stakeholders. I don't want to have to like soft power everyone. I want to write more code. And I often have to tell them, you're not going to be very, very happy in this role. Because of course, this is like kind of, we take that as a given, right? Like you need to have the tech skill to execute on projects in this realm. But that skill in isolation is useless if you're not good at getting people to actually use what you built, or if you're not clear on, hey, here are things that I can't just by myself fix. I need other people to change their behavior in how they build model, in how they look at data, even in things like how they present the data in the eye. I need to influence that, and that will be real impact to our end stakeholders. Like at the end of the day, who we think of as our like internal customers or stakeholders are all the people using data, making decisions with data. And oftentimes we kind of have to influence, for analysts, for example, to present data in slightly different ways, or to build slightly more scalable models, or to add a lot of metadata to those models for a positive effect to reach the end stakeholders. So yeah, your day-to-day could really be, maybe today I'm building a model, but it could also be like, I have a bunch of meetings and I need to really do clear user interviews. That's a lot thing that we do a lot, like really side-by-side, sit down with your stakeholders, look at what they're doing on their screen, let them rant a bit on everything that sucks about what we've built. And then we kind of have this feedback loop between, we figure out in the individual domains, like really working closely with the stakeholders, what are the recurring problems, like what slows us down. We come together centrally, and then we build these kind of almost task forces of like, okay, we realized our Slack alerting is really bad for when our pipelines fail. So we then build this task force that centrally tries to fix that, right? Like build better Slack alerts, or the technical challenge with that. So you would go away, code for a bit, and then you would come back and test this with a small user group at first, but then you would scale it to the entire organization. And that's where our team has a lot of leverage, right? Like the kind of thesis of return on investment on our team is really, we raise the floor for everyone. So in the past, we would often have power user analysts figure out this stuff really well in their team. Like, this one team has amazing Slack alerts, but it would never reach the rest of the organization. With us, it's like, okay, we take that and then we scale that to the entire organization.
Really interesting. I think the point around, locking yourself away and building code, that role, in my opinion, is just going to disappear. And if you stay with that mindset, I think you're really going to struggle over the coming years. We can get on, I think, towards the end of the episode about where the industry's heading and AI and how that's affecting it. But I think the importance of being close to your stakeholders, close to the problem, has never been more prevalent as execution becomes easier. If you're looking for a varied day and spinning a few different plates, then it sounds like your team's a very good place to be. One of the things I think AE's been. Data modeling's always been around, right? But DBT coining the term back in 2018, 2019, and it growing as a discipline from there. I think one of the areas that a lot of teams across data engineering and particularly analytics engineering do struggle with is how do we actually contextualize our impact? You've spoken about these KPIs and how you tie stuff towards the business impact, but I think as an AE team, what are your KPIs for success, and how do you look back at a quarter and say we've done a good job?
That's another really good question. Been asked a lot, and also have asked myself a lot, especially this looking back thing, right? Like I think that is where you really realize, like often forward-looking planning, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to improve this KPI, we're going to improve that KPI. If you then look back at your projects, it's like, did that actually materialize? A lot of the time it didn't, which is not an issue. It's just a learning opportunity to kind of retro, but it is definitely something top of mind for me. To more directly answer your question, our KPI tree kind of splits into two areas. So on the one hand, I would say broadly, we're trying to optimize productivity, maybe like maximize productivity. What we mean by that is, can people who want to make decisions, or often it's also quite operational use cases actually, for example, trying to monitor where our customers wait the longest in a queue to get in contact with the customer support agent or something like that. Like there are lots of different use cases that we actually support. Some of them more analytical, classical analytical, like, oh, what's our conversion rate? And some of them are actually quite operational. We look at all of that, kind of call that decision making roughly, and we say, okay, we want to make that fast and quick and snappy. And then we trust that if we can do that, we basically build a better product for our customers. Like we understand our customers better, we build a better product. And luckily, that trust, to be honest, I have zero evidence for that happening. This is just an axiom that I take as granted. In the organization, we have a lot of trust in that. Like, luckily, I don't need to go around and get buy-in for like, oh, it does make sense for us to understand our customers better via data. It's very much ingrained in the organization. So I'm in a luxurious, or we as a team are in a luxurious position there. But high level, that's what we're trying to optimize or maximize the productivity with data, with the constraint of not increasing prices for our customers, right? Like a lot of the problems, for example, we have is like, oh, data loads very slowly. I could solve that tomorrow by kind of 10xing our warehouse or something like that. But that would really break our cost constraint of like, yeah, you need to do this by becoming smarter, not just by throwing money at the problem most of the time. In the productivity, on the productivity side, productivity, no one can agree what that means, right? It's very, very intangible. So our approach to it has been to kind of triangulate metrics. So we look at survey-based stuff. So we call that analytics NPS. It's like any other net promoter score you would do for any other product. We don't ask, would you recommend this to your friends? But we basically ask, how much do you trust the data you find? Like, does it load for you really? How easy is it for you to find data? And we kind of calculate a score from that. We also have kind of more like harder metrics, maybe more direct measurable metrics. For example, the lead time, like the first time that an analyst tries to build a model kind of locally in their preview environments, etc., to the time that it's actually live in production. Connected, they're like sub KPIs. Then like, okay, how long do they wait for CI checks? How often do these CI checks fail and stuff like that? How long does it take for data to actually load? It's basically, we have too many KPIs, I have to definitely admit that. We're basically trying to get an impression of, are we doing a good job from looking at the combination of all of those? And then specific projects, we often try to tie to one or two of those metrics. This has some weaknesses in practice for sure. For example, on the survey-based stuff, if you don't get really good sample sizes, it's incredibly difficult to actually measure and attribute improvements, that, like small improvements, especially that you made. In a way, that's good, because in a way we want to only work on projects that have such a large impact that you don't have to worry about precision or anything like that. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you can clearly see the step change here. But in practice, you often end up like, okay, we know this is a smart thing to do. We can't really measure like 100%. And like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, what was our incrementally? What was our part of moving the needle there?
Exactly. But yeah, high level, that's how we're approaching our kind of KPIs and how we understand and communicate back the impact from our team. Yeah.
Really interesting. And I was going to say, how do you deal with then communicating that to leadership and the wider business? I imagine and know Wise is obviously a very sort of data savvy and very data literate business. But yeah, how do you approach that? Because I think that hearing that would be really valuable for some people, because I think that's often where the gap is sometimes in AE, is that we know we're adding value, but maybe communicating that, particularly to a non-technical stakeholder, is where the challenge comes in.
For sure, yeah. I think 2 points on that. One is we are part of our usual quarterly planning process that every team goes through here. So we put together very in-depth retros on how did our KPIs move and why did they move, and then positively, hopefully, here are the things that we delivered that made them move. So that's kind of built into the org culture of like we do have that accountability at all times, because we get a lot of empowerment and autonomy, we have the accountability to then show this is what that moved. And the easiest way to communicate to the rest of the business it's worth this investment is to show, hey, this number moved, and I can explain to you why it's important that number moves. That's maybe the second point. Is like, especially to maybe people who are not deep in the data world and SQL or whatever is going on. I think tying it to their almost personal experiences of trying to do their job, right? Like, if we do a good job, their job becomes easier. So I need to be able to figure out, okay, definitely people in leadership positions, they rely on data and monitoring of what's going on in the business a lot. But even other teams that are kind of around us, I need to be able to tell them a story of, hey, you know how you constantly try to figure out what our conversion rate in this specific segment is, and the data keeps breaking, or it loads really slowly, or you can't. Biggest problem actually is usually you can't find the data, right? Like, we're very data democratized, means our warehouse is a mess. Can't even really call it a warehouse. Like, everything in there, very, very difficult to find what specific data set can I actually trust. We put a lot of work into fixing that over time, and we can show in our KPIs then over time, like, hey, this is getting better. Like, it is now easier for you to find data. For example, we deployed this product called Table Finder. It's like a Slack channel. You go to, you're like, hey, here's my problem. Do we have data on this? And we kind of do a search through all our metadata to say, oh, here's the most trusted, most relevant data set for that. And we can go back and say, here's how many users that Slack channel has. Here's how many upvotes versus downvotes the answers get. And at the end of the day, here's the effect that has on how many people say that it's easy or difficult for them to find data. And that should be felt by your end users, right? Like, you shouldn't have to like talk them into the idea of you doing a good job. They should just generally recognize that their work life got a little bit easier by the thing that you developed or deployed.
Really, really interesting. And do you know what? You've set me up for a lovely segue there as well with that new project that you mentioned. I think one thing people would love to hear, and I know we've discussed, is what you guys are doing with LLMs and AI in real practice. There's a lot of talk in the industry. I do think everyone in data, we are in a little bit more of a bubble compared to when you look at organisations that aren't thinking about data. We're very far ahead. But yeah, what are you doing in the space? How have you actually implemented the use of LLMs, AI-based projects? What are some of the projects that you're working on?
Sure, yeah. I have to remind myself that we're in a bubble. It's a good reminder from you, because my head is full of all the things we can't yet do and all the things that are bad about it. But then it's sometimes cool to get a bit of perspective of like, okay, in reality, some of this is actually pretty magical already. I think where we have most impact already materialized is kind of on the data producer side. So one thing that our team specifically owns is kind of a package of different tools, MCPs mostly, that we call the analytics MCP. So the idea here is like, you get lots of like kind of connectors. So hey, this can interact with dbt well now, this can interact with our BI tooling, with our data, but also with like, Jira for project management and Slack and all of this stuff, combined with this kind of skills marketplace where we have a few skill files, like AI skill files, that kind of automatically invoke whenever you try to do a data-related job. And that means we enable people to move fast, but within guardrails, where we can kind of say, okay, this is how we would build a dbt pipeline at Wise. Very different from probably what an LLM would do if you just let it try, because what dbt recommends, maybe what it was trained on the internet, is very different from how we use specific tooling. So that's where we have quite a lot of active users already weekly. Like, this was probably our best product market fit story ever. Like the usage just completely exploded immediately. And we do see, I would say still more anecdotally, like really clear productivity wins from this. But to be honest, this is one of the areas where we're not yet that good at like really, here's the quantified exact like ROI calculation on here's how much money we spend on tokens versus what that gain does actually in work for our customers. We're still a bit early days on that. Like, so we're still more in the, put it out there. People really seem to love it, but we're not yet in the quantification stage there yet. But I think that's where we have the clearest user story and kind of impact story. The kind of table finder thing that I mentioned is dashboard finder as well. has a similar story, very, very big uptake also outside of the data producer community. This is more aimed at people who actually want to make some decision based on data, and they need almost like a switchboard, like, hey, what data should I actually be looking at? This consistently over since I started this, even before that, consistently the biggest weakness we had when we look at the feedback we get from these surveys and talking to people. We actually do a customer interview every Friday. We take a random BI tool user in the company and we sit them down and they just talk us through what their problems are with data. The problem that comes up again and again is like, I can't, if I type in lifetime value, I get like 5,000 assets and I don't know which one actually is usable or is curated or anything like that. So that's where we see a lot of value as well. So just okay, we can now use an LLM to point you directly to the data that you should be working in. I personally, this is just a personal view, not validated yet, don't think that conversational analytics are that useful in the classic data retrieval use case. I think it's actually less comfortable than using let's say, explore and look or something like that to, if I just want some charts, I just want to explore some data, I think it's actually more cumbersome to type hello, can I please have a bar chart with this color, blah, blah. It's actually faster to just retrieve data with this other interface. So I'm actually personally more excited about this kind of direct switchboard directing to the right data kind of use case. But it remains to be seen what the numbers say in the end about this. So that's kind of the space where we've been using LLMs pretty extensively. So on the producer side, pretty deep into it already. Our organization, other teams in our organization have done an amazing job to really early on give a really strong platform to host all of this stuff, make it work in a safe way, right? We are a very, very regulated company. We hold a lot of very sensitive financial customer information, and we take this incredibly seriously. So this is another thing at scale. You really, really need to be incredibly careful and clear with what data do you expose to an agent, what data do you definitely not expose to them, how do you make this usable for users as well? Right now, the LLMs are very, very good at this data producer use case where the people who use it would know how to do the job anyway, right? They would know how to write to these DBT models. They can kind of look at the SQL queries that get generated and they can say, oh, this is complete nonsense, or this actually makes sense. So we have this validation step in there. And for that, it feels kind of magic. It's so much faster if I know what the outcome should look like. What we're really not good at yet is the use cases where it's this is someone who has no idea what SQL is, for example, or not really. And they still have a very valid use case. At the end of the day, they want to make a decision. It's a reasonable question to the business to be hey, where's the data on this? Show me that. But we're still very careful with this at the moment because you end up with, obviously, very, very easily end up with hallucinations or completely confidently presented wrong information. And we're still very, very careful about that. Similar to what the rest of the industry has been doing. Everyone's very hot on the semantic layer here as well. We're very, very strongly investing into this at the moment. Early results look pretty promising. But that's probably the next step for us is how do we really get mass adoption for this use case of my dream already 4 years ago before AI started. I always thought oh, can we get there? It's you as anyone in the business, you have one interface, you describe in natural language, here's my problem. You kind of a good analyst would coach you into asking the right question, right? They wouldn't just show you data. They would be no, you're asking the wrong question. What are you trying to do actually? Basically have a little bit of coaching and then you go into, okay, here's the data asset that gives you that. That's all I want. But so many things need to come together for that, right? We've worked on it for 4 years. Now some of it is coming together a bit, but still not fully there. You need to have the data there, you need to have all the metadata, semantic information, and you need to have these interfaces, and you need to connect all of it. And as I mentioned earlier, in a large organization, you need to make sure that's completely compliant, that's you're very careful on security, you're very careful on data access. That's kind of the problem space that we're operating in at the moment. It's very, very exciting to figure out.
It sounds it. One of the things that grabbed my attention there, you mentioned obviously this sort of switchboard type sort of interface, and it got me thinking some of the challenges you're trying to solve. Are there other other industries, other areas where they've solved these types of problems, just not with the data context. The mind takes me to like the bullet train and the hummingbird, and I suppose borrowing ideas and philosophies from other areas. So really interesting to see you use that sort of analogy. Are there any other sort of use cases or where you've sort of maybe borrowed from other disciplines as a way of sort of solving these new problems that the data's facing?
Yeah, I think for us, it's mostly from the kind of product management side, right? Like I kind of see every AE here as a product manager to a degree. It's like, okay, what do you need to do? You need to sit down with your customers, or internal stakeholders, figure out what the actual problems are, and then you need to build kind of a plan around how to solve that, and you need to rally other people around that cause. So a lot of the methodology of how we work day to day, I think is very much borrowed from good product management.
I couldn't agree more, and I think being able to, with AI, framing the problem and having the idea and the visions behind that and helping shape them visions, it's never been more important to a creation of something new and pushing that forward. Moritz, you've been at Wise for a fairly long time, and you obviously shared some of the really cool and exciting and impactful work. I think that's obviously great, but it's always good to hear some of the war stories. What are some of the things that have gone wrong? I think that's obviously probably where you've done your biggest learning, and most people do, right? So, I hope you don't mind maybe sharing some of these war wounds with the audience. But what would you say have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned from failures?
Yeah, very, very happy to share that. I'm a big believer in this idea of almost publishing a CV of failures, where you say, okay, here's all the stuff that actually didn't work, and here's what we hopefully learn from it. I think there are a lot of small examples where I was just completely wrong on my intuition of what people in the business actually wanted and would be useful to them. One of them is maybe, for example, DBT exposures, like this idea of you have full end-to-end lineage, like you can see all the way from the dashboard to the kind of the production service where that starts, and the other way around. And in my mind, it's of course I would want that. If I'm an analyst, if I'm an engineer, I want to see everything that happens downstream of me. I want to understand the usage of my data assets and stuff. In reality, it never really got that much uptake. We spent quite a lot of time building this stuff, and then you end up no one finds it that useful. You do interviews with people, that's cool, but then you look at who's actually using it, no one. And even DBT docs, kind of this documentation layer, has been similar for us. I think this is more of an issue of how we present it and make it really accessible. So I think my biggest learning has always been there earlier and earlier validation. Never try to sit in a corner and dream up what people ought to need. It's sit down with the actual people. And you don't need to do this scientifically with here's the sample size. Speak to 5 people and you already have a really good idea of are you on track here or not? And do you see people really give uptake here? I think there's a big distance between what sounds cool to present at a conference to other data people versus what, if you went to a random person in the business, you ask them hey, what's cool about data here, or something like that. There's a big gap between that, right? I think what people care about, who actually need this data, is often very different from what we in a data space find really cool and interesting. So that's been a big learning for me. Is really talk even earlier. Never assume that you are the average user who represents everyone. I think the other bit that I've really learned over time, and I'm still learning to be honest, is to be more pragmatic and less dogmatic. I went in often very hardline on things, right? I went okay, every model here now needs to be incremental because that's our cost problem, needs to be fixed that way. Or we need to have this level of data quality everywhere at a minimum. And over time, I realized, no, that's actually not solving the problem. That's just me being my brain wants structure. To solve the actual problem, you need to look at the downstream use cases and you need to match what's happening upstream of that to that. This is super important financial information. Yeah, we better have all the things that I mentioned. This is something that will be used for 1 week for an experiment. Cool, let people, we can easily reverse the decision. Fine, let people be a bit messy and quick. So I'd rather now build systems that allow flexibility, but are just very, very clearly labeling what's happening. This is messy data. Cool, very useful for a couple of people. If you just joined the company, you shouldn't see that. You shouldn't be able to, that shouldn't be in your face. What should be in your face is the curated data. But I think I see this in the data space a lot, this like dogmatism around, I know everything needs to have data quality, everything needs to follow these very strict linting rules and stuff like that. Something that I started in that camp, but I think over time I've learned more and more. You can really go overboard with this, basically.
Yeah, I think that links to, I suppose, it's pushed by the vendors, right? Back in the day, big data, collect all the data, store it all in our warehouse, costs are cheap, you never know when it might be valuable, and actually, you just get these swamps, it becomes, analysis paralysis, not knowing what to look at. So I think that pragmatic approach really makes sense. I think from what you described, if I could contextualize it in one word, would probably be empathy towards what is the actual use case and the stakeholders that are using it, and putting yourself in their shoes rather than looking at it through your data lens is probably the important bit there. That brings us on to, I suppose, one thing that would be good to touch on would be, you've been on this incredible journey of Wise. You're leading and scaling this AE team. What, looking back, would you, if you could change one thing, what about this journey and what you've been doing, what would it be, and what do you think the impact of that would have?
Yeah, I think I would move a bit quicker on some of the pragmatism. So, for example, we were as I mentioned, a very centralized team for a long time, and probably a bit longer than was actually useful. I think we hit this point eventually where, the incremental central improvements you can make to the platform are still cool, they're valuable, but how much value they add is nothing in comparison to year one, where you go from nothing to there's something at least. And then more and more you realize, hey, all the actual problems are in the domain, in the context. And then from over that, we kind of spun out more into, okay, we still have this, we come together centrally, as I mentioned, but generally we work in our domain context. Maybe that will go back. Maybe one day we realize, we actually have really, really big investments to make on the central side, and then we'll kind of reshape the team a bit more. I would have moved faster on that for sure. I think that's probably the one thing that would have had the biggest impact to change. There are a lot of things that would change retroactively, but that's probably the one thing that would have saved a lot of unnecessary work and really gotten our stakeholders value much more quickly.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I suppose it would be great to, I know you're hiring, we're still trying to scale the team. For anyone listening, what is the right type of profile for you? Who are the types of people and hires that you see really succeed? What attributes and skills do they have?
Yeah, I think I can start with a bit of a personal hot take on that one. I think one meme that I've seen in the community that, in my opinion, needs to die is that we treat people like video game characters that have a certain pool of points to distribute into different strengths and weaknesses. And then, okay, either you're good with tech stuff or you're good at talking to people or something, in a very overly basic way to look at that. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Yes, of course, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, definitely included in different areas that we focus on more, give us more intrinsic pleasure. But what I've seen, it's very difficult often to find profiles that are more well-rounded and kind of these unicorn, you're actually good at really being motivated by the end impact, but you also can technically deliver and you don't get blocked by actually being able to execute on projects. It's rare, but that is who we're looking for, right? At the end of the day, it's about, you need to have the understanding that we're not doing this job in isolation, for the sake of it, we're trying to achieve an end goal here. But you also need to really have the skills at the end of the day to deliver on it. And that combination is really who we're looking for. It's people who get really motivated by the level of autonomy we give them, the level of empowerment. It's hey, instead of me telling you, here are the 5 tickets, do those tickets and you get a promotion, it's hey, here's a big problem. I think maybe is there a problem? Please go and look at that. And then you go and they're oh, wow, yeah, this is a problem. Or maybe not. Hey, here's how we solve that problem. And let's build a team, or let's get people in to do this, and that, and deploy this code, and then measure if it actually worked. If you're really motivated by that kind of product cycle and flexing your tech skills and actually deploying stuff at scale again, that is really cool. I think that's a really good fit for our team.
Excellent. Well, look, if anyone's listening, I'm sure feel free to hit up Moritz or check out the careers page as well. So look, before we wrap up, Moritz, I suppose I would like to get your perspective on looking forward. I'm not going to hold you accountable to anything that we say here because the world's moving pretty quickly. But yeah, like where do you see the role of data and I suppose specifically analytics engineering heading over the next few years? It'd be good to get your hot takes.
Ooh, yeah, this is getting more and more difficult. This even 1 year prediction is pretty difficult. I'm definitely bought into this idea that AE will become more and more the librarian role and maybe less and less the plumber role, like less and less like, oh, I sit down and build specific models like SQL code all day, and more towards almost this like philosophical concept of like what is knowledge, like in a business, like what does this represent and who could use this data, and like can we between us agree what these numbers or whatever data type they are mean in the real world for our customers. Like I think that is really exciting to me as a role. Like I think that's going to be so at the core of decision making for how do businesses run, right? Like how do we drive value for our customers? It's going to be, I think, less and less like, oh, I sit down for hours and hours on end and try to troubleshoot one annoying SQL bug. And it's going to be more and more just like real tough decision of like, hey, there's all this data. What does it mean for our customers at the end of the day?
Very interesting. And I think one of the things I've been asking a lot of people as well recently is what's your most controversial view on the data industry?
Yeah, I don't know how controversial this is, but I would say my hot take, completely unsubstantiated, there is that probably 90% of dashboards and data assets are useless. And Vanity, I had really, really good advice very early in my career. Kai, one of my former colleagues, like the first dashboard I ever built kind of destroyed it. It's like, why do we have this tile? What decision do we make? Why do we have this? What decision do we make? Every single like 15 charts on the dashboard. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like really learned a lot from that. And to this day, before I build anything, before hopefully anyone on our team builds anything, we should kind of almost like prototype, completely mock fake data and say, hey, let's say we build this and this number goes up by that. What do you do? And in my experience, in most cases, the answer is nothing really. You'll probably hear the word interesting a lot. That's a very dangerous word. Oh, it would be very interesting to see that data. Usually that means nothing. Usually that means you're just wasting your time here. And so I think generally people in data realize this, but I think it's even worse than the generally held opinion is. Like I think the vast majority of data projects I see are like vanity end to end. They're not actually driving any impact.
I think that's a very great place to leave. I think it's a really, really relevant point. And I suppose is AI analytics the silver bullet to that point?
Probably not. I'm not looking forward to my inbox on the LinkedIn inbox on that.
Well, look, Moritz, thank you so much for such an honest and candid conversation about what's going on at Wise and the role that you've played and your team. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Long time coming. Glad we got around to doing it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been very, very interesting. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to think and talk about this stuff. As always, I ranted a bit more than necessary, but I'm very happy to be on the show, and thank you. No
worries. Well, that's it for this week, folks. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick one from me. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you could hit that follow button or leave us a rating. Even better, pass the show on to a friend who might also get some insight from it. It really helps us grow the community and continue to share amazing conversations. I also wanted to take a minute to talk to you about Cognify. For those of you that don't know, Cognify is the leading recruitment partner for modern data teams. We help some of the world's best organizations scale data and drive real value from the hires that they make. If you're thinking about building a team or making a hire and you're struggling with talent or just want some insights on the market, then I'd love to jump on a call with you and tell you a bit more. Equally, if you're looking for a job and want to find your next dream role, then reach out to myself or any of the Cognify team. We'd be happy to see if there's anything on our books that we can help you with. and give you general advice on the industry. Finally, a big thank you to Omni, this season's sponsor. If you'd like to learn more about the AI analytics that Omni can deliver you, then check out the link in the show notes or come speak to me. I can happily point you in the right direction. Again, thanks for listening and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time.